Hi there, welcome to the Carr Brothers Show. It's episode 119, Jody.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yes, and I'm Jack, and of course we got Jody.
I'm Jody, and the third of the three Carr brothers wasn't able to make it tonight.
No, Jeff wasn't able to make it. He sends his regrets.
I got bumped up to number 2.
That's right.
So that's like a promotion.
It is.
Yes,
it is.
yes.
It's great. So we want to welcome our guest, Tim Porter.
Yes.
So happy to have you here, Tim. You're 35 years in communications and media and government relations and government, former Deputy Minister of Communications New Brunswick for the government of New Brunswick and Daily Gleaner reporter. And,
Yes.
And now you're the co-founder of a media and public relations firm called Porter O'Brien.
Yes. Well, thanks for making me feel old there, Jack.
You're welcome.
Although I'm just a little bit older than you,
Yeah.
I think. But yes, I started this firm, I guess about 5 years ago now. Maybe not quite. But we saw an opportunity, I think, in working in PR. And surprisingly enough, for Fredericton, there weren't a lot of pure PR or government relations firms in the city. There were a lot of kind of marketing firms or people that were doing websites and that sort of thing, but not on the more harder edge PR specifically and specializing in that. So we were able to look at that, and we kind of looked at the market across the region and saw an opportunity to grow in the region. Both my partner and I, Jordan O'Brien, who's the O'Brien part of Porter O'Brien, we worked together, and we had one other person with us in those early days. And we worked the market in the Atlantic region. We saw a great opportunity also in Ottawa. Mm-hmm. And we started to expand a little bit. And the more we were able to grow, of course, it was kind of the time of the pandemic. And a lot of people were working from home. And that seemed to work out for us okay. We did establish a little office in downtown Fredericton. We've just recently moved into a bigger office because we had outgrown it in Fredericton. And we've established also an office in Moncton. So, and we have people, across the region working from their homes, like in St. John and in Grand Falls, nice. Montreal, Toronto. So the workforce is there.
Wow.
The clients are there. So things have been going surprisingly well.
Well, that's a great testament to start a business and keep a business going. It's one thing to start it, but it's another thing to keep it going, and then something even more to grow.
Yes.
And you're growing, so
right.
Porter O'Brien. So
how much is your workforce? How many are in your workforce now? Between part-time, full-time?
I'd say we're kind of maybe about 18 right now.
That's good.
We've got a couple of part-timers, but it's
Good. And you say surprisingly because probably you're modest, but you just had no idea how going out on your own, how successful you'd be.
Well, we thought it would just be the two of us, really,
right.
Or maybe a third or fourth, but it didn't. We didn't contemplate something larger, but it just seemed to grow organically. And every market we look at, we see opportunity. Like even out west, my business partner spends a lot of time in Calgary, and surprisingly enough, Westerners like Maritimers. Mm-hmm. They don't, and they want maybe a maritime touch to when they're going back to Ottawa. They don't necessarily like the Ontario people, and they like the vibe of the maritime people, and we're quite successful actually working with some Calgarians.
Makes sense because there'd be a good workforce in Calgary and Fort McMurray and Edmonton from
right.
the Maritimes.
Yeah.
Already from people moving out working in the oil industry. So
that's right.
Makes sense that it would work.
And your clientele, how would you describe who you work for? Who hires Porter O'Brien?
Well, I mean, it's pretty broad based. So locally, it would be, because we're in Fredericton, we have a lot of associations or
Like nonprofit organizations or
Yeah.
Industry associations.
unions or
Yeah.
that represent blocks of people, and oftentimes they're looking for someone to explain government to them, explain
The
how to-
process.
explain how you talk to government and how you get things done, and it's not always, and I know it's not always just talking to the politician.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's working the system and knowing who in the bureaucracy to talk to and how to get things moving through the
And
system.
likely the steps you have to take. I mean, there's a whole
That's right.
series of steps if people want policy or a project or whatnot. Would you be considered a lobbyist organization?
Yes,
Yes,
in some
Some
degree, yes. On some, for some clients, absolutely.
Just depending on the legislation and what you're.
But I mean, I know that has a dirty connotation to it. It, as I say, we like to say it more as government relations, because oftentimes we're just trying to help
Facilitate.
our client
Facilitate.
figure out how to do business.
Yeah.
Like, for example, during the pandemic, we represented the Cosmetology Association, who
Oh yes.
got shut down
Yeah.
quite a bit, and it's largely a female-based industry, and largely it's individuals working on their own,
self-employed.
So they have a low income. They're not high income businesses, and being shut down really affected them.
Yeah.
So they needed someone to talk to government about, well, these are the standards that we employ that keep people safe, that, and talk to the health department and public health to say, we have the standards and you can trust that they can be open, and that sort of thing. So, we were very helpful for an organization like that during that time.
Yeah.
And just figuring out afterwards, how do they get compensation from government? And often there's
Through the
pools
different
of
programs.
money
Yeah,
programs,
programs and-
as you would be aware as minister.
Yeah.
And they need to access those and figure out where they are and how do you get an application through and
Yeah.
that sort of
Process.
Yeah.
all that
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you probably would do some. I've seen on your website, but also on social media, you do media training as well for private, nonprofit. Probably do maybe some government contracts as well, but some media training.
Yeah, so we kind of we started as PR, and my background is in public relations, and my partner, we worked together in public relations. He kind of deviated into management consulting a little bit, and we decided when we formed this, well, we're going to try some different things. So we have kind of organized some management consulting, and we do quite a bit with municipalities and with organizations that have to work with their executive, how we can make it more efficient and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So we work with those, but also we work also on the training side.
Right.
So we would give everything from media training to
Public speaking.
machinery of government. Like
Right.
we do a course through the chamber, like how does government operate, that sort of thing.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize to that extent of your training. That makes sense.
So it's quite broad. It's a lot of things in between and a lot of crossover and multi-modalities there for organizations, just depending on what their needs are.
That's right.
Really.
No,
Where-
there
what they're-
are a lot of crossovers,
Yeah.
Jack, absolutely. And also, through our Moncton office, we have quite a few Francophone clients that have very specific needs. And in terms of, working with government and getting their voices heard in the province. So we've actually been very happy with the way that's been going as well. And, I think there's quite a bit of market even outside in other provinces where francophones, need a voice. They're the minority,
Right.
and there's a lot of organizations that are looking for help in
Throughout
those
the
areas.
country. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Great point, actually. Maybe underserviced in those other provinces.
Yeah,
Here in New Brunswick, you've got the expertise, experience,
that's right.
language.
What if it's a nonprofit organization? Maybe they don't have a lot of funds. I guess, is having support from your company out of the realm for them? I guess, is it over? Would you expect it to be overly expensive, or I guess how do you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you do have to look at the client, and if it's in the non-profit sector, you do have to kind of look at a rate that would be a little better. We've worked with the Fredericton Community Kitchen here.
Okay.
A number of food-related organizations in the province that are trying to deliver food to people.
Yeah.
That sort of thing we've worked with. So yeah, there would be kind of a non-profit consideration there. Absolutely.
Oh, nice. But I guess it would be, it's also an investment for the organizations, whether they're nonprofit, private. The expertise, I guess, if you need a plumber, you hire a plumber. If you maybe not necessarily, you could spend a lot of time, I guess, spinning your wheels. If you're an organization that may not understand the machinery of government, hire someone that does do it.
Right.
For all this years of experience to save yourself
save
time and maybe even get further ahead sooner as well. Save a lot of time, agony,
Yeah.
and maybe be more successful. If you have a misstep along those ways, if you're not experienced in that, well, that could set you back as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe moves the ball a little quicker down the field.
Down the
Yeah.
field there, yeah.
And for some organizations, they can't afford a full-time person. So if they had basically a contract with your organization, you have the expertise, they maybe could spend, that would be on a part-time, but they know they have the guaranteed service with you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, a lot of organizations, if you hire, you got to pay benefits, you got to pay the whole thing. And with an if you hire an organization like myself, I mean, I don't want to sell myself too much here, but if you do that, then you save on that. You don't have to. It's a one-time shot, right?
Yeah.
And we pay the benefits of the employee and everything else, and you don't have to, kind of thing.
Lower risk that way. To take on another employee. So what else? Anything else about Porter O'Brien, the organization? Anything? Looking ahead, and then I would like to get into some of your other aspects of your past careers as well. But anything you're looking at in the future for Porter O'Brien? Any next steps? You've got things on the
I think
horizon?
it's more markets.
Right.
So, we're looking at the Ottawa market quite a bit.
Yeah.
And we're very mindful of the change in government that could be occurring federally. That you've got to consider. The contacts that you make are going to be all different maybe in a year or two.
Right.
And so you've got to kind of work on that a bit.
For that.
So we're kind of anticipating that and ensuring that, we can continue to have good dialogue with the federal government. That would be one area.
How do you keep your pulse on this around the mood of the public, or what flavor the public has or wants when you're preparing media or communications, public relations, and also what might happen with governments, and that's all, I guess, a big question.
Well, I think most of our employees are media junkies.
So you're fine, basically, yeah.
Polling nerds, that sort of thing. There's a lot of analytics that
Keep your ear to the ground. You have lots of conversations, and your staff do too, probably.
With your clients.
You read Facebook, Twitter. You monitor these things, so
Right.
you probably do as a company, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah.
Getting out there, getting out around, whether you're a reporter or a government employee or self-employed. You got to get out and around. You're talking to
That's
clients. You're networking. You're going to events. I see any events that we're at. You're probably at way more than what we are. Maybe at networking events for the chamber or for the
Yeah, we do a
public
lot.
events. So
With all the chambers and
Keeps your pulse.
in the region we try to work with.
Yeah.
So those are important. But yeah, it was just like our reporter days, Jack. You can't just sit behind a desk
no,
to get the job done. You got to get out on the street and figure out what's going on.
what's going on? What's happening?
Absolutely.
So can we go back a little bit to Tim's?
let's do that.
Now, I don't know how far back you're going to go back here, Jack.
I just wanted to know when you.
How many decades are we going here?
Right. Yeah. Well, what got you started in as a reporter, as a journalist?
Yeah, what-
Were you interested in school, high school, and university, and then you got interested, or how'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, a little mixed bag. I was interested in journalism. I think journalism is just something I did, and my interest was always maybe a little broader than journalism, but that's what I did probably for when I got the first few years after high school, etc.
Yeah.
And
Where'd you go to school? Did you go to school?
Yeah.
Here we're going to uncover your resume, Tim.
Yes.
I shouldn't ask a question I don't know.
No, I did. I got a diploma in journalism, and then I went to university and kind of took a broad-based arts program and went on from there.
Okay, yeah.
But my interest was broader, but I was always able to do journalism, so it was something that kept me employed and going.
Yeah.
And very quickly out of school, I did get a job at the Daily Gleaner. I think you mentioned off the top.
Because when I was elected first in 1999, I remember you were a reporter then.
Right.
I can't remember. I don't know how long you had been a reporter, but
Yeah, so I had done some freelance in the kind of late '80s kind of thing, and by the '90s I was working at the papers. Worked with it down, putting out the evening paper at the Telegraph in St. John for a while, and then I came up. I was in Fredericton, and worked about 10 years in Fredericton, and that was an evolution. Back then you had beats and you covered different things. So municipal beat, maybe you were on that
Yes,
one,
I was.
and there's an education beat and a crime beat and a police beat, a military beat, and
You had all these beats.
yeah,
Yes.
everyone had a different specialty, and eventually, halfway through the '90s, I ended up at the legislature down at the press gallery, and that kind of became my political beat, and that's when I probably ran into you in '95 when you ran against Vaughn Blaney.
Yeah.
yes, probably.
I didn't think we know each too well back then, but I certainly knew you in '99.
Yeah.
When you were elected, yeah.
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 Well, those years as a legislator, I don't even know how many reporters they'd have in the press gallery there now, but back then it was jam-packed and big scrums, and
Right.
But you would cover all the political events.
Right.
For people that may not know, but you'd be down at the press gallery in the legislature and cover primarily the political events, and then follow them for the Gleaner and
Each outlet had a desk.
right.
You had a booth because you were in radio.
We'd be by every once in a while.
Right.
Well, normally we'd have broadcast news that we'd rely on, but
That's right.
yeah, we have them. But all the other outlets would have them all in their cubbies and their desks. And
Yeah. Yeah.
What
that
did-
was fun. It was
you-
kind of
yeah.
a clubbish kind of
Right.
feel to it. Yeah.
and were you ever the president of the
Yeah.
press gallery?
Last
I
couple
thought so.
of years.
I
Yeah.
thought so, yeah.
Last couple of years.
And that's quite a long history of presidents of the press gallery. How old is the press gallery in New Brunswick?
Oh well, I think it went back to the '70s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's quite something.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
So great experience, and then from there.
And it was housed right off the floor of the legislature
right.
for a while. And then because of space, people say it's a big building. It's actually a very small building. And eventually they got pushed out and across the across the alley.
So I didn't realize.
So where in the legislature were you? Where were they?
Oh, right off
Like one
where
of the so-called
government
ante
members
rooms?
are.
Oh, yeah.
One of those rooms.
Where all these rooms right there. Oh, there I didn't see that was before
Where
me.
where the
House
government
leader.
house leader has his office.
Oh,
Okay,
down
down that
down
corner.
the
That
bottom.
was the press gallery.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So great days. A lot of characters back then too for political
Oh, absolutely.
politicians.
Yeah, I was kind of at the tail end of all the
fun.
characters, but yeah, no, it was a good group.
Great stepping stone. Well, we're going to talk about the some of your next stepping stones from your time at the Gleaner and the Legislative Press Gallery and how you transitioned to government. We're going to talk about that right after this break. We're going to take a quick little break, Joe, on the Carr brothers, and we'll be right back.
Can't wait to see you back.
These days at your local Legion, we're marching to the beat of a different drum. On a mission to support veterans, to have fun, and to welcome everyone to our ranks. You don't have to be a veteran to join the Legion. And as a member, you'll join thousands of others serving our veterans, our communities, and our country. Oh yeah, and our Member Perks program will save you thousands on shopping, dining, products, and services across the country. Join us at legion.ca.
And hi there, welcome back to the Carr Brothers. It's episode 119. I'm Jack.
And I'm Jody, and Jeff couldn't make it tonight, sends his regrets.
Right.
But if you're just joining us, you know that we have special guest Tim Porter, has a significant amount of experience in journalism, in public relations, and in government, and now is a co-owner of Porter O'Brien Communications, Public Relations, Government Relations firm based out of Fredericton, but around the region and quickly expanding across the country.
It is.
So thank you, Tim, for being here with us.
My pleasure.
We're having a great fireside chat here.
Yes.
So learning a lot. Well, we talked a lot about Porter O'Brien. We talked about your experience as a journalist with Daily Gleaner and the Telegraph Journal. And now let's transition from being a journalist to then working as a government employee in government relations and media relations. And that was quite an experience, and that will eventually get that experience, combine that with being a journalist and now with what you do now with Porter O'Brien. But you've had quite a tenure there with the government of New Brunswick, all the way as Deputy Minister of Communications New Brunswick, and that was quite
Yeah, I was there for about 20 years.
right.
20 years. Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah, I started out. I guess when I left the press gallery, I went to an organization called Communications New Brunswick, which is a communications agency that the government had, kind of something that had been set up in the 70s and evolved into a modern communications agency, particularly as the web grew and that sort of thing, and that sort of mode of communication expanded, electronics and email and everything else. Actually, it's kind of an agency model that you would see out in the private sector now. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was certainly an interesting thing to walk into, and just learning from the people that had been there, and a lot of them had been there for 10 or 20 years themselves, setting up the organization. And one thing I have learned, and over my course of 20 years in government, there were a lot of good ideas in the 70s and 80s by very tenured people who set up things that made sense, and they stood the test of time. And in today's world, we're a little too quick to kind of throw things out and change them, and
Not give it time, not give an idea time and
Right,
massage.
yeah.
Or at
and
least digging down deeper to get
there's
to
a lot of organizations that when I went into them, they'd been there for a while, and that was certainly true also when I went to the Council of Atlantic Premiers the next decade.
Yeah.
But that was an organization that had been around for a while. Made a lot of sense. The deputies that had set that up knew what they were doing in terms of regional cooperation and that sort of thing. And I was very impressed when I'd go back over the logs and try to figure out why are we doing certain things.
Yeah.
And they would make a lot of logical sense. Yeah.
And so you touched on maybe that's not the case the same now. In terms of what's changed. You've worked a lot with different premiers, whether you've covered them in the news or you work directly as Deputy Minister of Communications or in communications. You have an intimate connection right then with especially premiers,
with the inner circle.
deputy ministers, and ministers. So what's changed?
Well, I mean, my reference point in New Brunswick would have been with the provincial government probably, starting in the mid 80s or so with Hatfield, then throughout the McKenna time. And I worked as a journalist in those times. And the deputies of those days were tenured. They were there because they had been there a long
Worked
time.
up through the
and
ranks.
they knew their departments, they knew the system, that sort of thing.
Had
Would
history,
you say
had the
they
history
were?
of
Would you
policy.
say they were like respected,
Oh, yeah.
recognized,
Oh,
respected?
yes.
That's what you do
And-
kind of sense when you think about some of the names,
And there was no confusion between the political and the civil servant. There was no confusion there. Like there were political people, yes, but they weren't the same as the
Civil
the
service.
deputies, the
Right.
civil servants. So you had that kind of backstop to things, and you could kind of rely on that. And I think over time, and that continued, I think through Bernard Lord. I mean, he certainly respected that quite a bit, but it did start to kind of melt away over time. Particularly, I think, as in New Brunswick. I mean, we've changed premiers every 4 years, and
Yeah.
and so there's been a lot of turnover. And we focus a lot, like in journalism, on the politician,
Right.
But really, Fredericton's thousands of civil servants, and they're all run by upper echelon civil servants, right? And we don't ever hear about them. We don't ever hear about who's really running things and that sort of thing. It's kind of that something
shield.
we don't talk about. But those faces have changed quite rapidly. Like when I came in as Deputy Communications in 2010 on an acting basis, and when I left a decade later, I had been there the longest. Now I had gone to Halifax for a while, but all of the people had changed probably a few times over, in that decade, and it was really quite amazing. And you wouldn't have seen that probably in the 70s or 80s. Absolutely.
Yeah. So why the change? Why such a rapid change of individuals in the senior civil service?
I don't know.
In 10 years.
Maybe
or
it's
15 years.
maybe it's the what we read about in terms of premiers being a little too absolute.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wielding maybe absolute power over people and changing them according to their tastes. Maybe that's going on. I don't know.
But things definitely have changed. So it's centralization of power and
Oh yes. Oh yes. I mean, you would recall. I mean, back in, take for example Sheldon Lee under Frank McKenna. He had a lot of autonomy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe there were others under Bernard Lord, like maybe
Well, they
Elvie Robichaud.
LV.
they took ownership of their file, of their department, and the premier of the day gave them that ownership
Yes.
to manage their department with their deputy.
Yes, and today, not so much. Like the ministers aren't necessarily even the final say on everything.
Yeah.
It all goes back to the center.
To central. And
Yeah.
one thing I've noticed as well, Tim, is that back even maybe up to even 10 years ago, you'd be up to then. You would have press releases every day. There'd be this minister
Yes,
making a press release, doing a speech, doing an announcement, and even in opposition, you'd have almost daily press releases.
Well,
from
we'd
all the
stand
different
right
critics.
outside the cabinet room. You remember,
Yes,
you'd go up
yeah,
to the
that's right.
Centennial Building,
By the Premier's
on the Premier's office, right outside his
Yeah.
door, second floor, and you'd stand there and wait
Yeah,
for the minister of the day, whoever you wanted to talk to.
and all of them could speak just like that.
And
on
they
an
would
issue.
talk. Well, yeah,
go.
and we'd go and get interviews, and that was the system. Never
Don't see
happened
that-
today.
You don't see a whole
today.
lot
None at
from
all today.
ministers, press releases, press
It's all
announcements.
canned. It's
Yeah,
all canned
yeah.
stuff.
Very
Or even not even scrums, but emailed statements and
Right.
that sort of thing. Yeah,
And why do you think that would be? Is that
it's control.
control?
Yeah, yeah, it's much easier to control.
More to well, you don't have to do necessarily damage control if you don't have a number of politicians speaking, perhaps, or
You don't get
I don't know
follow-up
why, but
questions.
yeah.
You email an answer, and
get it a couple days later.
it's just
Wow.
yeah.
So right to an issue in New Brunswick, the Premier's office, the Premier has hired a principal secretary that's also the campaign manager for the Progressive Conservative Party. The outhouse, his name is, and he's come from out of province. Is that what in your experience? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's absolutely what I'm talking about. Yeah, that would never have occurred.
Anywhere?
To have the campaign manager, he was named campaign manager first, and then given the job
Yeah.
in the civil service.
Yeah.
You know, that's unheard of.
Do you think it resonates out around the public, or do you think people are just avoid from it?
Well,
Or is that yet to be told at election time, I suppose?
that's that undercurrent that I'm talking about that we don't get. Like there could be more scrutiny on that, but we're not getting that. I mean, the media landscape's changed so much.
So between the media
There are-
cutbacks and
There-
changes.
yes, I mean, well, newspapers don't
Moderate down,
exist.
yeah.
Very barely. I mean, they have a bit of a functioning press gallery, but there's newspapers as we knew them no longer
Not the same.
exist. The CBC is still plugging away, and there's some radio stations and TV stations plugging away, but it's not a great environment.
No.
And so there isn't that level of scrutiny, I think, Jody, that there could be. But I think you're right to identify that as being completely abnormal.
Mhm.
Uh,
And
yeah.
you've, I mean, you're not really saying anything. I'm not really trying to ask you anything that you really haven't
already
said
said.
on Twitter or Facebook. You've made some opinionated. You get involved a fair amount in the policy decisions, political decisions of the current government in New Brunswick.
Which is actually interesting, being self-employed. A lot of times, businesses, well, they won't necessarily get involved with criticizing, critiquing, but I don't. You seem to do a good job of that, but you're not afraid to do that either.
Well,
Like, you stick it right out there.
To be perfectly honest, we're one of the few firms in the province that we don't work for government. We work with people who work with government, who want to advance their cause with government or have government explain to them. We don't necessarily.
You're one of the
Work for
Are you in
government.
the category of one of the unliked with
Is
this
it
government?
your policy or is it
I
the government's
don't know.
policy they don't use?
I've never tested that, but we just don't pursue it.
Okay.
But I have noticed that there are quite a few firms that do pursue that sort of work.
Yeah.
And that kind of may influences them the other way. So no, I mean we exist now in a very active social media realm.
Yeah.
You've got to stay relevant, I guess. So that's what we do. So if you see a foul ball, you call a foul ball.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't look the other way.
Yeah. And so, what are the big foul balls with this provincial government under Blaine Higgs?
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to spot. There's really, there's a long list of both political people and I think people who worked within his office who are no longer there, and there's a reason for that. Yeah. So he's kind of isolated himself, I think, with his extremism. But no, I would say that everyone kind of sees the same thing, and you would have to be fairly blind to it all to not see what's going on.
Do you think that, because I think in our system we can protect a minister and we can isolate a premier, often schedulers, handlers, whatnot. Do you think that the premier understands that undercurrent, or the foul balls that we think everyone else sees? You
No.
think he's just
I don't think he cares.
Cares, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think he cares. I think he sees an opportunity to pursue an agenda. He's decided, it's a very individual agenda that he has, and he's carrying it out in multiple departments. So whether it's control over the healthcare system or, meddling in the education department.
Yeah. Now right into curriculum and what's being presented in the classroom is for me, as a former education minister, I never ever heard of it, ever saw that myself.
You mean pronouns?
Pronouns,
Or just
sexual
Right,
section,
yes,
curriculum,
yeah.
any type of direct policy in the classroom.
Because, you were there as education minister, Jode, and Blaine Higgs was finance minister. But a lot of times that was touted as, oh no, we got too many politicians involved in the government garage, too many politicians involved in the taking the budget, inflating the budget.
And in our schools with French immersion, whether it was the Liberals that intervened in French immersion policy or whatever, he'd be a big critic.
Sometimes people that criticize the most do exactly what they criticize.
The way I look on it is, you've got a 70-year-old man and he's got his thoughts, and the kids today, they don't care. They don't care about the pronouns. They don't care about sexual orientation. They accept.
They're losing sleep over it. No.
They accept.
Yeah.
They're not debating it.
Yeah.
They accept. And it's old people, like us, that can't accept it. And yeah.
Now the opposition, what factors do you think they're up for the job to replace the premier and the government? And does that matter at this point? And do you think that Blaine Higgs can still win the election? There's a couple double-barreled questions there.
Well, I mean, can he win the election? Well, yes. I mean, there's always that possibility. We don't know until the campaign rolls out. I mean, in 87, there were probably a lot of people thought Richard Hatfield could pull it off because he pulled it off in 82.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll pull it off in 87.
Yeah.
But, and he got his percentage of the vote, just under 30, I think. But he just lost enough across the province to just be obliterated. And is the potential for that again? Of course. I mean, the Liberals could run the table. That's a possibility as well. Is it likely? Well, maybe not. I mean,
You mean a sweep?
Yeah.
Yeah. But a change in government, you don't, it's, or is that what you're?
I think the Liberals have a pathway there.
Yeah.
But the Conservatives have their support.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going away, and it's that little percentage that swings that'll make the difference. And sometimes it's the splits with the Greens and that sort of thing.
Have you seen this many? It's pretty unusual to see this many current members of the legislature and ministers of a governing party not reoffer again. I mean, if you could see maybe if it was a 10-year government, a 17-year government, even after 17 years, you didn't have that many resignations in 87.
But it's 5 years or 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a 6-year government, and what does that tell you? What does that tell you?
Well, I mean, if I don't see those incumbents and I don't see stars replacing them, then
You're considering all options.
I think all those ridings are on the table.
Yeah, that's typical.
You know,
I think so. I mean, also there's boundary changes that took place.
like in
yes,
So
yeah, the
that's a
boundary
big factor to me is a
Yep.
boundary change because
gives people a free pass to say, well, I'm going to now look at my options this way.
even in Blaine Hicks's own riding, there's been a huge boundary change.
so it's unpredictable.
The latest poll, and then we talked about it earlier. I can't remember which company it was, but it was 37% for the Liberals, 34% for the PCs, which I was actually surprised that it stayed quite high for the PCs at 34.
And also, when you dig down, it said Southern New Brunswick is 41% for the PCs that they're leading.
So they still really have a chance to win a lot of seats if you have vote splitting as well over on the left side.
Yeah, there's a lot of pockets. So, you know, the Conservatives certainly have pockets up and down the River Valley, just like the Liberals have their pockets up north. You know, that's all true. So it's kind of, it is, the battles are won very regionally, I think,
Even more
very
so,
locally.
riding locally.
Vocal, yes, yeah. But I mean, back to your point about names. I mean, you know, you look at St. John, and suddenly you don't see Trevor Holder there after 20 years, 25 years, and
right?
you don't see Dorothy after almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, well, okay, so there's a lot of opportunity going on there. You know, in Harbor too. You know, so and then Fredericton's kind of been split up a bit. So, you know, things are going to be different here. David Coons.
What do you think about Nicole Carlin? You know Nicole, I'm sure. Her running as a candidate from the Premier's office, running in the Susan Holt's riding as a candidate. Do you think she's a paper candidate? Do you think that she has a chance there? What does it? Do you have any opinion about it at all? I don't know.
Well, I think she's certainly running there as Blaine Higgs's best bet to challenge or
keep a leader
maybe
busy.
not challenge, but yes,
Keep her busy,
keep Susan Holt busy. That's his best bet. Probably if she really wanted a seat in the legislature, she would have ran in Hanwell, New Maryland, which was kind of opened up with Cardy leaving.
And Carr.
I know the boundary changed, but but that was probably a better opportunity for a Conservative in that riding. Downtown Fredericton, I don't know. I mean, they've been voting Green. I know there's Silverwood's kind of in there too, but I think Susan's probably okay.
But back to my question about Susan Holt and the Liberal Party. Does you said she has a path forward? What advice do you give to someone like Susan to try to win?
Does she come across as a premier in waiting?
Yeah, does it?
Well, I think she's gone a long way to show the different sides of her. I think she has a compassionate side. She listens to people. She's making an effort with this spring with her tour of the schools and going out, talking to people, ensuring that she understands the issues. And lately, I've been hearing her talk more about her business background because she's got an extensive business background and, you know, in economics and running companies and that sort of thing. And I think that she's probably a very well-rounded person. You know, she's a mother of 3. She's kind of doing it all here. And she's, you know, in her 40s. I mean, it would just be so nice to have maybe a female premier. It might be nice for this province to have a little different
It might be time.
vibe at the top. It might be time.
Might be well past time for a change.
Seeing how, you know, her speeches and how she's handling herself in the media, in the legislature.
Plus candidate recruitment.
Candidate
And just getting candidate recruitment.
Candidates,
It's
that's
interesting. Key candidates
component.
that you're getting that you're not seeing with the other party.
Right.
What would you advise? We might go to the different leaders, but what advice would you give Susan Holt to to add or to change to what she's doing right now?
I think just amplify and ensure that everyone's hearing her, and people need to. I'm a big advocate of going on the radio and going on TV, and just so people get to know you better.
Yeah.
They need to feel a comfort level with you. So the more you do that, the more comfortable you are with a person, and that's why sometimes it takes a long time for
that to catch.
for an opposition leader to grow and catch fire. But I think if she would amplify more, that would be a good.
Well, David Kuhn, what advice would you give to someone like David Kuhn? He's been in politics for quite a while.
Not grown his party that much.
Not growing that much, but from you being around and seeing and interviewing and working, what advice would you give to him?
Well, yeah, I mean, David's been tilling the same ground for quite a few years in terms of, he was with the Conservation Council and he moved to the Greens. David's a nice guy. Sometimes I think he's a little too willing to capitulate. I think he worked a little too much with Blaine Higgs and got burned over the last few years. Particularly on budgets. He voted for budgets and that sort of thing, and propped him up when he needed propping up, and then you kind of say, well, okay. And I think he had a thing when David came in as Green leader. He seemed to have a thing against Liberals. I don't think he liked Brian Gallant. I think he had a thing.
Yeah.
He didn't want to really
Help them.
help
so
the Liberals too much. So he was kind of happy that the Liberals weren't in. And as a result, we've had 5 or 6 years of Conservatives. So I think that is a concern. And it's a concern also for the Liberals. I mean, they have to look over their shoulder and, their left flank and see that what the Greens are doing. And, they do have 3 key seats. You never know when you might get a 4th or that sort of thing. But
so now, if Blaine Higgs were to call you and say, "Oh, Tim, how about you come on in? Let's have coffee. I want to hear what your thoughts are." If you had that meeting, what would you say to the current premier?
Well, I think there's been a little too much revolving door going on. Yeah.
Just kind of stop the revolving door
I think.
process.
Well, I've seen too many people
Coming out.
coming out that door that's been invited in to ever walk through that door again. No.
Right.
No.
So if he had, even for coffee, you say, Tim, even for coffee, I want to pick your brain. You got a lot of experience.
I mean, anyone I'd sit down for coffee,
Yeah.
but I'm not. I wouldn't give.
Not-
I don't think I'd work
Free
for
advice.
anyone in that way. No.
But what would you tell him that if he had to change something, or if he had to up to now, same as we did with the other 2 leaders? What would you tell him?
Well, I don't know if a leopard can change spots, but certainly he has to start trusting other people.
Yeah.
And I don't think he does that now. I mean, I don't think he trusts anyone. You don't get far when you're all by yourself. You've got to.
In pretty much anything, you don't get that far. Like,
No.
really, and whether it's even if it's in corporate. I mean,
Can't do it alone.
especially nowadays with the whole leadership styles of flat organizations and.
Yes.
But it's flat all right. It seems to be centralized all in. Even the deputies seem to all answer kind of to one deputy.
Right.
More so than ever before.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. We could talk longer.
Yes,
we
we could.
will have to as the as the election comes forward. This will be the first time in 30 years that a Carr will not be, at least one of our Carr boys will not be on the ballot
Yes,
in the
that's
provincial election.
amazing, isn't it?
So
amazing.
we'll have a lot more time to commentate.
That's right. We can commentate.
Yeah.
And say, give some opinions, and hopefully we'll chat again with you soon, Tim.
It'd be really interesting to have you back on, especially as the election unfolds and have some sort of perspective. Thanks for everything you do. Thanks for your friendship and your professionalism over the years and your continued work and professionalism with us, but also for the people in New Brunswick.
Okay.
That's
Thank you, Jody.
wonderful. Thank you.
And we want to thank our viewers as well on the Carr Brothers Show. thank you very much, and we'll see you again next time.